Hey everyone, it's Alice, and I'm here today with a spoiler-filled rant review of the Stag Series by M.A. Bennett. So I finally finished the fifth book in the Stag Series, which is H.A.W.K.S, and I was disappointed. It was the worst installment out of the entire series so far, and it made me wonder why I've been such a glutton for punishment about these books. Because the first one was like 3 stars, the second one was worse, the third one kind of got a bit better, then the fourth one went downhill again, and then the fifth one has just been probably the worst book I've read this year, if not one of the worst books I've read this year. So I'm just here to have a bit of a rant, close off some of these feelings and forget about this series forever. So if you haven't read the 5 books in the Stag series, then you have to decide whether you are ready for these spoilers or not. And if you are, then please come on this journey with me and let us have a rant. So this is mostly going to be focused on H.A.W.K.S, but I will just give you a quick overview of the Stag series in case you haven't read it or you aren't familiar with it. So in the first book, we meet a girl called Greer who has just got a scholarship to a private school, and she gets invited to Longcross, which is like the popular boy's estate, his like manor house. And they invite her for a weekend of hunting, shooting and fishing. And she is invited, as is Shafeen, who is the only Indian boy in their school, and Nell, who is new money. Her father has just made a new smartphone. It's the hottest thing around. And so in this school, medieval is the way to be. You want to be somebody who reads books. You want to be somebody who does long walks in the countryside. These people don't have smartphones, they don't use laptops, it's all very old-fashioned, and if you use anything that is like new technology or anything like that, then you are called a savage. So Nell obviously has this savage money. So the 3 of them get invited to Longcross, and they quickly realise that the reason that they've been invited is because they are the prey. They are being hunted, they are being shot at, and they are being fished. So they team up together, make a little kind of cabal of craziness and try to get away from this house, escape with their lives. And at the end of the book, the popular boy Henry de Wallencourt, the lord of the manor, or soon to be, actually dies. He falls off a waterfall and he plummets to his death. So they think it's over. And then Greer realises that it's actually part of a really big conspiracy. There's like, the teachers are involved in it, they're all wearing these Stag signet rings, and the series continues from there. So, it's a strong start. It's a very interesting start to the series. I think I gave it 3 stars because I've read books with like murder games before. I love Red Rising, and that has that in there. And I've read it better. And I also just hate Greer. I've hated Greer since the beginning of the first book. She is somebody who wants to be a filmmaker when she's older. She loves film, but it means that there's a lot of easily contrived references to films. Like, there will be the smallest similarity, and Greer will be like, this is like that scene in that film that I love, and she'll describe it all. And it just gets very tiring very quickly because each chapter will have like 17,000 film references stuffed into it, and it gets to the stage where Greer is referencing films more than she's actually doing anything else, and it's annoying. And then we move on to book 2, and the same thing happens. Like, they literally have just escaped from Longcross with their lives, and then Henry's cousins, Cass and Louis, invite the new girl, Ty, to the weekend at Longcross. And they're like, no, Ty, don't go. And Ty's like, I'm gonna go, because it was really hot. And then Greer, Nell and Shafeen all go back where they've been hunted, shot and fished at before, and they go back to save Ty. So it's just kind of like the same book again, which annoys me. There's also a play, and I can't really remember because I read it quite a few years ago. I've been reading these as they get released, but there's a play, and then Greer nearly gets hung for being involved in Henry's murder, so she gets like an M branded on her thumb. But then when she's in hospital, Henry comes to visit her, and she's like, am I hallucinating, or is that Henry de Wallencourt? And it turns out, shock horror, Henry didn't die. So in the third book we go to London, and basically the same thing happens again. They manage to find out some more about the Dark Order of the Grand Stag, I think is what DOGS ends up standing for, because Stag stands for Aiden of the Great School. Yeah, I'm gonna say that's right. And then there's Foxes, who are against the Stags. They're like the rebel group. So the book when they're in London is actually the most interesting one to me. It was my favourite one, and I thought we were reaching a turning point because the books went from being quite small to being a bit bigger to Foxes is like chunky as hell, but I flew through it and I really loved the third book. And then in the fourth book, Shafeen's father is taken ill, so they go to India. Shafeen and Greer go to India and they leave Nell behind at the school. And they go to India and they find out some more stuff about the past, and there's a very predictable twist in which Henry's dad and Shafeen's dad used to be together, and one of the reasons that Henry's dad was so like twisted and willing to murder people was because he wasn't allowed to be gay, because it was set in the past. But I saw that coming from 10,000 miles away, so that wasn't a very interesting twist. And then it turns out that Henry saved Shafeen's dad's life, so then Henry's like, you know what, I'm done with pretending to be dead, so I'm gonna come back with you guys, and then I'll like rock up at school and I'll just like come back and it'll be chill. Like, nobody will care about the fact that I've faked my death for like 2 years. Nobody will care about the fact that I've disappeared to the other side of the world. Nobody will care that my entire family thought I was dead, and like they've already changed the order of inheritance and the way that the earldom and the title are going to be passed on. Like, no one will care. It's chill. So in the fifth book, which is the one I've just read and is the one that is causing the most of the hassle for me, it feels like a completely different story while still doing exactly the same thing, which is impressive because it's repetitive as hell and it's the same thing again. They end up going to the Isle of Skye and they know they're going to get hunted and shot at and fished and that they're going to be the prey, but they go to the Isle of Skye to take part in this in the hope that they can take down the Dark Order of the Grand Stag and end all of the Stag stuff, and that people won't be attacked like this in the future. So it's repetitive in that sense, but it also feels like a completely different book because none of the characters seem the same. The focus of the story seems to change completely, and it makes it 10,000 times worse than the previous books already were. So this is how we're going to get like specifically spoilery about like minute bits that are finicky and really pissing me off. So in the newest book, there are no part breaks. And that shouldn't seem like a big thing, but if it's the fifth book in a series and the other 4 books were separated out into like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and they were broken down and it made the story a lot more easy to digest, and you could see the way that it was almost like different acts. And I thought, especially because there was such a link to playwrights and they did the play in the second book, I thought having those breakdowns and making it feel like it was acts of a play was very clever. I thought it was a choice that had been made that was the right thing for this world. But in the fifth book, that is completely dismissed, taken to the side. There are no part breaks whatsoever. So you go from having 4 books in a row that have been crafted in a very similar way, put together with these like basic building blocks of, okay, we'll have like the beginning, the middle and the end and they'll be broken down, to just having a basic story that is just told as a normal story would be, like just from the beginning to the end, no breaks. And it's only something small, but when that's what you're expecting going into a book and you've had 4 books out of 5 in the series, it is a very dramatic shift stylistically, and I don't know why that choice was made because it doesn't seem to make much sense. There's also the fact that Greer is the only one that gets an invite to the Isle of Skye. So at the beginning, her and they call themselves the Peel Tower Rebels because they're staying in this place called Peel Tower on the estate. But it's Nell, Shafeen, Greer, Ty, who is the girl who was nearly the victim in the second book, a new character called Ratio, who Ty has met online and is like an expert hacker and he got kicked out of Stags a few years ago, and also Nell's boyfriend, who is the headmaster of the school. We'll get onto that in a minute because I've got some feelings about that too. So the Peel Tower Rebels all go up to the Isle of Skye, and then Greer is the only one that actually goes into the mansion. Henry ends up joining her later because he decides to come back from the dead in this dramatic fashion, and they like walk into this ball together, which, again, we're just going to do an aside here. It doesn't make much sense how they do it because they're stood at the top of the stairs waiting to be introduced so they can go down into the stairs. But you're telling me that there's like hundreds of people in this room, and none of them happened to spot Henry stood at the top of the stairs and like gasp and inhale and stand up and be like, oh, Henry de Wallencourt back from the dead. Like, no, there's like this whole awkward bit when they're like waiting to be introduced because the other couples are dancing and they have to wait for the song to end. But somebody is fucking bound to notice him stood up there. So I think that would have been a better way of doing it, having that like moment of like somebody thinking they're seeing a ghost or somebody thinking that it's someone back from the dead. That would have been much more in the style of medieval, with like that interaction, rather than, okay, we're just going to stand here and like twiddle our thumbs for a minute while we wait to be introduced. It felt very boring, and I thought compared to how dramatic Henry's comeback from the dead could have been, it was very bland. But as I was saying for that little aside, the point is that Greer goes into the house by herself. She goes into this Castle MacLeod, I think it's called, by herself. And she's the only one of the cast of characters that is interacting with these people that she knows are going to try to murder her. And it's so boring. I flew through the first like quarter of the book and I wasn't like loving it, but I was enjoying it quite a bit because it was re-encountering these characters that I've read for the past like 4 or 5 years. Yeah, I read Stag-S when Sophia was only a couple of months old, so I've literally been reading this series for 4.5 years now. And it was nice to see these characters and see them interacting again. But when you take that away, the fact of the matter is that Greer is just a terrible character. She's so boring. All she does is like reference the films and be like, I'm really fearful for my life. I know they're going to plan my murder. I know they're attempting to kill me this weekend. Like, we get it. That's the whole reason you're there. You're there because you want them to try to kill you so that you can then catch them in the act and you can get this whole Dark Order taken down. We don't need to hear it every single fucking chapter like, oh no, it's so hard to eat dinner, when you're panicking about the fact that you're going to get killed. It's so hard to make conversation with the people who are going to try to kill you. We get it, Greer. We get it. Shut the fuck up. Please. So, that was annoying as hell. There's also the fact that it's just, oh my god. Shit. Okay, so let's talk about the love triangle, because let's be honest, if you've read this book, if you've read this series, it's one of the biggest parts of it. Nell is in a relationship with Shafine. No, not Nell. Why do I keep calling her Nell? Greer is in a relationship with Shafine. So, Greer and Shafine did the do in book 4 in Tigers. They made love on a rooftop in India and it was all glorious, and they were finally like joined in this moment where it was like, okay, Greer has made her decision. Henry proclaims his love in a hospital corridor and she's like, no, I'm just going to go sleep with Shafine because I don't love you. So, tell me how, in Hawks, we all of a sudden get it that she's just like, yeah, Henry, just fuck me. It's just so annoying because it doesn't feel true to the characters. So in book 1, Henry's like, got a thing for you, Greer, and Greer's like, nah, you's a shit person. And then Henry's like, I'm going to tell you some of my deep, dark backstory, and Greer's like, you know what? You're not that bad, but it doesn't really feel like it's that I am falling in love with you. It's like the slowest of slow burn romances in that you can't even really see that it's coming because it's Greer and Shafine. There's such a focus on their relationship. Like, M.A. Bennett makes you root for them so deeply, and you get to see these really touching conversations between them, and you get to see them like working together to take this Dark Order down, and they're a really great team. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, I've been falling in love with Henry for like ages. Like, it wasn't just because he said he loved me. Like, I've been in love with him for so long, and I'm going to kiss him and then be like, no, I can't be with you because I'm with Shafine. And then Shafine's going to be like, oh no, I saw you kiss him, and I'm like pissed off about it. Fair enough, Shafine. But then Shafine's like, look, I'll still take you back though. Like, we can still be together. So your girlfriend kisses someone else and sleeps with somebody else and then comes to you and is just like, yeah, I did something bad. And you're like, yeah, I know. I'll forgive you though. Without even having like a deep conversation of like, why did this happen? Do you have feelings for him? What is this kind of like, what does it mean for us? He's basically just like, yeah, I know you love him, but like, I love you. So what about us? And it just annoyed me the way that that whole thing was dealt with, because then the very end of the book, the very, very end, is like, oh, they're both waiting for her to make a decision, and then Henry has this hawk, and there's this drone hawk thing, and then Henry's hawk, like, swoops and knocks the drone out of the sky, and she's like, looks like they just made my decision for me, because she's obviously going for Henry. But it's like, what a fucking cop-out. We've just spent 5 books, 4 books of which were focused on this relationship building and her and Shafine and really making the audience root for them. And then we're just going to have a complete switch around and she's just going to be cheating all over the place and it's not going to make any sense whatsoever. And, like, I could kind of get it if she'd had a thing for Henry at the beginning. But it was very much, it didn't feel like that to me. I don't know if it was just written poorly or just very forgettable. But I'm surprised that M.A. Bennett chose to go that way with it, because I think it would have been much more powerful to be like, okay, look, this guy is proclaiming his love to me, but I'm in a relationship and I love Shafine and I'm happy with him, and I don't want Henry just because he's like hotter and because he's like the pinnacle of medieval or whatever. And it just, justice for Shafine is what I'm really here to say. Justice for Shafine. Like, there could have been a chance to do a polyamorous relationship, which I would have found more interesting, because Nell, why did I do it again? Greer, it's such a stupid name. If anybody watching this is called Greer, I'm sorry. I've never met anybody in real life called Greer. I've never known anybody called Greer. It just seems like a silly name. Greer and Shafine kind of have this conversation when she's like, do you think you can love 2 people? And he's like, no, I don't think I can, but, like, I'm sure some people can. And she's like, I think I'm one of those people. And it would have been interesting to see if that had developed into, like, a polyamorous relationship and there could have been a bit more of a focus on that. But instead it's like, there had to be a love triangle and there had to be a decision made right before the end of the book, even if it feels really untrue to these characters, untrue to the way that the story has been developing so far. It just feels so false and like it's only there for some kind of drama. And I'm not about that life. I'm not into that in books. I don't mind love triangles if they're well crafted. I don't mind love triangles if they are reasonable. But, like, this doesn't feel reasonable to me. It feels like it just comes out of nowhere. And I don't like that. Now we'll have a quick discussion about Nell, because I keep obviously wanting to talk about Nell, which is why I keep saying her name. Nell and the headmaster Nathaniel. So Nell has a thing for Nathaniel since he takes over in book 2, I think, and they get together. And Greer's basically like, yeah, she's like nearly 20 and he's like nearly 30, and like older boy with like a younger girl. It's like a tale as old as time, just to do a Beauty and the Beast quote. But, like, Jesus fucking Christ, he's her head teacher. That is, like, not okay. I don't care how noble he is. I don't care how honourable he is, like, helping with these foxes and trying to take down this dark order. That's not O-fucking-K. No. To quote Gerard Way, it's not O-fucking-K. Like, no. Let us not with that. So the justification that is given for this is that the headmaster has decided he doesn't want to be a headmaster anymore. He wants to go back to Oxford and he wants to complete his doctorate. So he's going to be a student again next year. And Nell is starting at Oxford in the winter, autumn time. So they're going to be students together. Which, like, okay, fair enough. If they had met and fallen in love as students despite the age gap, that would be okay. But I just think there's such a power dynamic there that just is not okay. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm just going to date my student for 6 months and then I'll stop being her headmaster, just go and follow her to Oxford, which is a wee bit creepy, because, like, if you've decided you want to do a doctorate, you could do that earlier. You don't have to be like, look, my very much younger than me girlfriend, who is my student, is going to Oxford to do her university course, so I'm now going to go and do a doctorate in Oxford at the same time as her. Seems a bit sus, and it's just very manipulative and I don't like it. And fair enough, Nathaniel's like an alright guy, but just the reaction of all of them to it just seems really false. I think that if that was me in that situation and I'd started dating my headmaster, my friends would be like, bitch, slow the fuck down. Are you okay? Like, are you sure you understand everything that's going on here? But they basically just make a joke out of the fact that Nell likes him for this many books, and then they start getting together and she's like, didn't see that coming. I just thought she had, like, a schoolgirl crush on him. And it's like, Greer, you've seen enough films to know about power dynamics and power issues like that. You've seen enough films to have seen films that include, like, manipulation from an older guy. You can't just be like, yeah, it's like Beauty and the Beast, though. Really? It's just frustrating. It's so frustrating that this series has gone on for 5 books and That was post. It's just frustrating that this series has gone on for 5 books, and it just feels like right at the end, all the characters have changed completely. Greer is still as self-absorbed as she can possibly be. She has her head so far up her own ass that I don't even know how she can see. And it's getting really good reviews, and I don't understand, and I don't know if it's just because most people don't carry on reading series that they don't like, but I'm a completionist, so I didn't like the first one, but I thought I'd give the second a go, and then I thought I'd give the third a go, and I've been kind of just hoping that it would pay off in the end. But this fifth book is very, very short. I think it's just as short as Stag's, if not ever so slightly longer, but it's not a satisfying conclusion. It's also... even the way that the plot resolves, I don't think is well thought out. I don't think it's well constructed. So basically, Nathaniel has links with Scotland Yard, and he says that he'll be able to get police officers to come to this big Lammas celebration that they're doing on the Isle of Skye, and they'll be able to catch the Grand Order of the Stag in the act, and it will be over. So, on the night of the event, Greer they haven't attempted to kill her. She's like mildly surprised by this, but then it's because they realise that they're trying to kill Ratio instead. So Ratio has been put in the head of this gigantic wicker stag, and they're burning the stag, and then they realise that obviously Ratio is in the head. So Nathaniel, headmaster, screwing his teacher Nathaniel, decides to climb up the outside of this burning stag, which is apparently fine because he was the Lammas fool, so he was coated in eggs and milk, which is how he manages to magically get away with not getting any kind of burns or any kind of danger from climbing up this burning wicker contraption, and he saves Ratio. And then all of these police come out of the forest and they're like, hands up, we're going to get interviews, we're going to get statements, we're going to get all of this evidence about the fact that you guys are bastards. You just tried to burn this poor kid alive, and that is nay-okay. And then it turns out that all of the police officers are actually members of the Foxes who are pretending to be police officers to get confessions so that they have evidence that they can give to Scotland Yard to then make arrests and get this whole order brought down. But my question is, surely, if it's a confession that's given to somebody who is not a police officer, then that, negates it. It would be, evidence that had been gathered in the wrong way, I'm pretty sure. Because most of the time in, TV cop dramas and stuff, they can't get, everyday people to pretend to be police officers to get confessions. That would be manipulative, and it would be a lie, and I don't think it would actually stand up in court at all, but that doesn't seem to be discussed in the slightest, and I don't know whether that's me being wrong, and if somebody confesses to something thinking that they're confessing to the police, then that is actually accepted as a confession, but it doesn't seem legit, and it means that the whole thing feels very contrived, it feels very false, and again, not about that life. There's also the fact that we find out that Ratio is Henry's older half-brother. So Henry's dad had an affair with Ratio's mum, and she got pregnant and had Ratio, and his name is actually Horatio because that was the name that Henry's dad went by when he was in his relationship with Shafine's dad. They had code names so they could write letters to each other, and it's so obvious from 10,000 miles away because Greer is ranting to Henry about Batman and the fact that the Joker is Batman's half-brother, and he just doesn't like the fact that he's an illegitimate son, so he's not the rightful heir. And then Henry's eyes go really wide and he's like, I need to speak to someone, because he quite clearly twigs what's going on. And Greer's just like, yeah, I get it, I need to speak to Shafine, it's not just you that needs to speak to someone. And this is what I mean when I say that Greer is so up herself, because it's then she's already said that Ratio, his eyes remind her of someone, but she can't twig who, even though she's staring into Henry's eyes all the frickin' time and then making out here, there and everywhere. She can't see the fact that oh no, these are the eyes that Ratio's eyes reminded me of, because she's dumb. And then when it comes out, it's just such a stupid reveal, because Henry's like, I'm just going to give you my earldom. I'm going to give you everything. You can have it all. You can't just make that kind of decision instantly, especially when you have just come back from the dead, because there are legalities and there's paperwork and there's going to be one hecky ton of, like, inheritance tax and stuff to pay, I'm pretty sure. You can't just be like, yeah, I don't really want to be an earl anymore. You can be the earl for me. Don't think it's going to be that easy. And then Henry comes out and is like, the only reason I gave it all up was because of you, Greer. And Greer's like, why would you do that? And he's like, well, you said I was an earl and you were just, like, on a council estate. So I was like, well, I won't be an earl anymore. Oh, Jesus Christ, Henry. Like, come on. Get your head out your pants. Like, I don't care how much you love this girl. Think logically. Like, being like, yeah, I'm going to give up all of my many millions. I've never had to work a day in my life. I've never known a life where I don't have a maid. I've always had people waiting on me hand and foot. I've always been very, very rich and very, very privileged. And now I'm just going to give that all up because I love you, a girl who I know from school and I've known for like 2 years and nearly tried to kill a couple times. I felt like I was losing my mind reading this book, and that's why I needed to have a rant review. I think that's it, though. I think that's it. Like, not like I haven't shredded it to absolute pieces. Not like I haven't shat on basically everything that occurs in this entire book. But yes, I'm feeling a bit better now that I've got all of that out. And if any of you have read this series and you agree or disagree with any of these points, then please do let me know down in the comments, because it might just be a case that I'm interpreting things in the wrong way, or you think that something's been foreshadowed quite nicely and I've missed it. So it would be nice to have a discussion about this series if you have read it and you are interested in having a chat with me. If you like this video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to subscribe, we'd be super duper grateful. We have very, very recently passed 1,000 subscribers, which is just absolutely baffling to me, but thank you all for your continued support, and we will see you again in a few days with another video. And just quickly, in case you've missed it, the Bad Bookworm book club of the month of September is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So if you are yet to start reading this with us, then please do pick up a copy and join in, and we will see you in a few days with another video. I'm Alyce. This is the Bumbling Vlogger. Thank you for listening to me rant. Bye!